The hell's going on over here? Good evening, sports fans, and a pleasure to have you here for the big combo show tonight. It's a football show and a golf show at the same time. We're really glad to have you with us here on the program as we get everybody situated for what should be a good time talking both sports for you here on this Wednesday. Thanks again, all of you who've been with us for the entire season. Mike in North Jersey is with us to cover both sports, all the scenarios, all the other stuff, as we get into football time and golf time at once. It's rare. Usually you don't have them both happening at the same time, but it has happened because of the pandemic, and we had the Masters last weekend. Probably not a lot to write home about in terms of a competitive standpoint, but a great win for Dustin Johnson. More on that coming up in the second half of our show. On the air tonight, we have John, we have Andy, we have our friend Mike in North Jersey. We don't have Ron. He'll be sending the picks via the text. And you got me. Can't go wrong with that. Got old Dave in the city ready to go, and the old cow ready to give you some more football talk and everything else. So let's start. We've got a lot to cover, and I won't waste any time because there's just so much to get into, but it certainly had a bang near the late afternoon where a Hail Murray, as they call it, from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins in the end zone puts the Cardinals ahead for good in what had been a really wild game between them and the Buffalo Bills. So let's not. With all that on the table, everything on the line in college football too, we'll try to cover it all in one sitting. Let's hit it. Football picks week 11. Late start here in the studio. Thanks for bearing with us. Here we go. This is what happened in week number 10 on the contest. You had old Dave, that's me, at the top with 5 points, going 2-1-1 for the weekend. That was a bit of a gift. I really did not deserve the push in the Browns game. Just a little bit of a better bad beat, though. I really should have lost it, but I was lucky in that I happened to have 3 points rather than 3.5, where a lot of other places had it for the Cleveland Browns. So second place was Ron in New Jersey at 2-2 for 4 points. Andy was also 2-2 for a tie in second place for week number 10 at 4 points. And John just behind at 1-2-1, and he finishes with 3 points for week number 10. Umberto's Clam House was the guest picker last week. I said coach, but that was a bit of a mix-up. We figured it out behind the scenes. But Clams went 2-2, and he gets the 4 points for the guest pickers in week 10. So here are the standings after 10 weeks. Ron is still at the top at 44 points at 22-12 for the season record. I'm just behind at 41 points, 20-13-1. John is in third place at 37 points, 18-15-1. Andy is in last place at 31 points, 15-18-1. And the guest picks are 13-21 for 26 points. Whew, quite a lot to go on here as we get everything rolling here for a Football Picks Wednesday. So let's go say hello to our panelists now. And I'm going to start with our friend Andy in Seattle. Andy, welcome back. How's it going tonight?
I'm good. My computer's a little frozen.
Do I hear you?
Can you hear me?
I am a dumbass. Hold on, Andy. Okay. There we go.
Hello?
Do we have you, Andy?
Hello?
Yep, that was my fault.
All right.
I forgot to plug something in.
I'm here. My computer's a little frozen, though, so if you lose me, I'll try to patch back in, but I don't know what's going on. But I'm here.
Sounds good. Okay, so also joining us on the program, it is John in Connecticut. How's it going, John? Oh, and this time I got asked to unmute. So never mind. Okay,
Hear
John.
me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, no, glad to be back, but not liking how this action is going tonight. So we're hoping for some magic in the fourth quarter here in a couple of these games. Otherwise, it could be a sour last hour of the podcast this year.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I think I'm probably on one of the games together, but it's kind of I agree with you. It's kind of, the one that really disappointed me though. Eastern Michigan was the biggest disappointment so far in the evening. I really thought they'd do more than they did.
Oh, they look horrible, and Central Michigan looks just as bad. I did not know, like, their defense is just pathetic. Well, whatever, we'll see what happens here.
Yep. Right on, right on. And finally, our guest picker tonight, Mike in North Jersey. Welcome back, Mike. How's it going?
Doing pretty well, Dave. Thanks for having me on, and a sincere thank you for mushing Donald Trump on election night a couple weeks ago.
All timer. Hey, I'm glad to do it. I mean, I'll take it. You bet. All right, so a lot of football to talk about, guys, and I think, gosh, where do you even begin? I guess you could begin from the end, which would be Monday night, and it was kind of rough. And the Bears were certainly a problem, especially at the quarterback position. And then you step back from that, you had the wild and rainy Sunday night football game between the Ravens and the Patriots. Patriots finished up ahead, and then you had all the wildness in the late afternoon window. A lot to cover, but so to start all of the recaps, we're going to cover both the NFL and college from last weekend, so we can do everything in one sitting. I'll give it to you, John, for the complete recap of both college and pro.
Oh man, all right. Yeah, a couple really interesting games that affected the spreads at the end of the game. Obviously, you mentioned that Cleveland game in your open. Some of us had 3.5 or 4, and Nick Chubb breaking a huge run at the end of the game, and then completely stepping out of bounds at the half-yard line when he easily could have scored. I mean, at that point, you go up 10 with 50 seconds left, and the Texans have no timeouts. I mean, you're not going to lose the game at that point. Just score. And that was a tough beat if you had the Browns -3.5 or -4. But it's crazy. The last 2 Browns games have been played in just 50-mile-per-hour winds and like torrential rain. And I think the forecast for this weekend against the Eagles game, their game against the Eagles at home, is not looking great too.
Wow.
So if you like getting on the unders for those games early in the week, I mean, you really could have done very well. Like they opened like at 52, 53, and then when you see the forecast, it goes all the way down to 46 by game time, and they still hit. But just crazy weather for that scenario. Obviously, you mentioned the Arizona Buffalo game. Buffalo had that great drive at the end of the game. Josh Allen throws it in there to take the lead, and then Kyler Murray, with that incredible Hail Mary pass. It reminds me of when Rodgers had the stretch when he had like 3 Hail Marys in the span of 4 or 5 months there, and it was actually the same end zone as one of his Hail Marys in the playoffs. But Hopkins, just tremendous catch. He just threw it up there and he got it. And the key thing here for the gambling standpoint was the Cardinals elected not to kick the extra point. So anyone with Buffalo +3 or +2.5 ended up winning. And I could see the thought process from Arizona's standpoint. You don't want to risk having a blocked extra point returned for the 2 points. I mean, I guess when you look at that compared to Buffalo like returning the kickback on a crazy lateral play, the difference is like negligible. I think they probably could have kicked it and it really didn't matter. But that's kind of what they did. And when I was thinking about it, why they didn't do it afterwards. And in terms of some of the other games that went on Sunday, the Packers just got by. A win is a win, I guess, at this point. I think having no fans at Lambeau Field, it definitely has affected them so far this year. There's just not a lot of juice in some of these games against like lower opponents. It bit them against Minnesota, but Jacksonville, you're able to hang on. I think you'll actually see a more focused Green Bay team at Indy on Sunday. It's a road game, and certainly there'll be a better atmosphere there. The Rams won against Seattle. I called that one. Seattle is just, the Rams have the perfect formula with their defensive line to get after Wilson. The Giants with a huge win, and they're right in the NFC East race at 3-7. I mean, they might actually be the favorites right now to win the NFC East. It's just that division is just such garbage. It's crazy. And I'll let I think Andy will probably talk about the Patriots. Nice upset win for them on Sunday night, keep their season going. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It was an interesting weekend of action. It was those two games that had some gambling scenarios at the end there that kind of made the internet explode. But it was a good week.
It was a good week. It was also, as you noted earlier, the week of bad beats. I mean, we had them everywhere. We had them in college. We had them in the pros.
Oh, was I supposed to mention college too, Dave? I'm sorry. Like, honestly, there's really nothing to mention in college football. All the top 10 games got postponed or canceled. I mean, I guess, all right, Notre Dame didn't have their trap game against BC. They won and barely covered, or depending on where you got the line, if it was a 14, it was a push. But other than that, there was really nothing to talk about in college football, other than like 20 games got postponed.
It was a very dull weekend in college. I'm not going to argue that. So if there's nothing to contribute, there's no reason to force it either. I literally have nothing to say except for one thing. I did call it with USC. I told you guys they were not going to win that game easily. And they had to make a comeback just to win the game against Arizona, who could barely score. They were shut out like multiple times last season. So but despite all that, it was not a surprise to see them struggle. And I will have more to say about that team later on this program. So let's go to Andy. Let's get your recap of last week's action. And again, you don't say as much or as little as you want about college, but the pros, certainly a lot going on.
All right. I hope you all can still hear me because my computer's just completely frozen. So I'm just scrolling through the college football scores to see if there's anything of note. I think the rub is off of PJ Fleck. They got their doors blown open, Iowa, Minnesota, if anyone was watching college football last Friday night. Miami, Virginia Tech played a pretty close game. I know some people here had Miami. Some people here had Virginia Tech. That was an interesting game, probably the most ACC I've watched in a while. I mean, I don't really call Notre Dame ACC, even though they kind of are. Again, BC, Notre Dame. It seems like BC opened up the playbook, tried to do everything they could possible to upset Notre Dame. But I don't know, Ian Book has looked as good as he has in his entire career for Notre Dame, and BC they couldn't stop a nosebleed over the course of 4 quarters. So Notre Dame did what they needed to do to stay in it. Dave, you mentioned that USC-Arizona game. We had Arizona getting – whatever it was, 11, maybe 14. And second game in a row where USC is covered by their hair, their chinny chin, won by the hair, their chinny chin chin. They definitely didn't cover. I'm pissed off at Colorado. Stanford still never bet on David Shaw, but we did. We didn't think they'd cover 8.5 points, but we threw them in a money line parlay, just thinking that with Stanford getting their quarterback back in the starting lineup after the false COVID scenario, and with Colorado giving up a ton of points to UCLA the week before, and listening to Kirk Herbstreit last Saturday morning saying that David Shaw's got his best receivers that he's ever had, and don't be alarmed at Stanford because they lost relatively badly against Oregon. David Shaw waited till they were down about 21 points to actually start running some offense, but God damn it, get lost, David Shaw. Anyway. And then the Oregon-Washington State was a degenerate game. Watched a lot of that SMU-Tulsa game. Some of the AAC diehards on the program were into that. Had a feeling Florida and Arkansas, as we picked Arkansas on the podcast last week, but just had a bad feeling, even though we picked it. Like, eventually Arkansas isn't going to cover, and Florida just Dan Mullen was trying to score 80. they were not gas pedal was depressed the entire game. if people actually cared about Michigan football, we could talk about, how bad they are, but we'll pass on that. And then Oregon, Washington State, a lot of the Mongols out here think Jimmy Lake is like, the second coming of, the next it coach. And I don't know, he's good at defense, but if anyone watched that game, their offense struggled, and they were the recipient of a very, very sketchy call. Oregon State should have won the game. They got a first down about like the 4-yard line of Washington's 4-yard line late in the game, and they got a terrible spot. And then the next day, even the Pac-12 was like, no, the spot was still good, but it wasn't a good spot. If you saw it live, like they definitely got first down. And then it was revealed that like at Husky Stadium, they were like missing like 4 different cameras. So again, Pac-12 continues to just shoot themselves in the foot, and they're just a disaster, Dave. Like they're a disaster.
Did you watch the game in the morning when the Cal played UCLA at the Rose Bowl?
I didn't. Because there was the Masters going on, so I didn't watch it. But I looked at the score. I was like, dang, should have taken UCLA.
Yeah.
But who knows?
All right, one more for you, Andy, but then we'll go to Mike. But I had to give it to your Patriots for gutting it out in the rain and the wind and everything. It just seemed like once you had a lead, you figured the weather was going to really protect it. It was quite a game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they just happened to be the team that got up 2 touchdowns, and it just felt like every time Baltimore had the ball, that's when the rain was at its hardest. And just had a weird feeling. It's not like I was predicted a win, but I think the Patriots are going to cover tonight. And it had an old school Patriots feel where they were just running the ball, Damian Harris. And I know that Baltimore had like that one really good drive. It took almost a half of a quarter. They went down the field methodically. But other than that, Patriots defense looked good. They had a big pick right before halftime. Lamar, he struggled. Anyone would have struggled to throw the ball in that weather. I mean, that was some crazy rain, especially at the end. But good win for the Pats. John covered those gambling scenarios really well. Another cranky gripe is anyone that had the Niners plus 10, you felt like you got screwed too, because 49ers, they muffed 2 punts, and then the Saints also scored a touchdown because of a very, very, very egregious roughing the passer penalty that was called on San Francisco that basically led to a Saints touchdown. And then, sorry, Yachts, but that Dolphins magic continued. That was a fun game. Watched way too much of that Eagles Giants game. And then, I was Operation Don't Pay the Bookie last Sunday. So I went heavy on the Rams first half, Rams for the game. And as John nailed it last week on the podcast, Seattle still be all right because they play a lot of NFC East coming up, but it was just not the best matchup for the Seahawks. That Rams defense is good, and Goff, Goff looked pretty good last week. They, Goff to Cup over and over and over again in that Seattle secondary. The secondary might even make Carson Wentz look good these days. So, we'd like to see that.
Well, we're going to really see it on Thursday. We'll get to that in a moment, but man, that Seattle defense is the worst I've seen ever. And you'd have to go back to like way before they probably were in the AFC the last time their defense was that bad. Seriously. It's so bad. It's just so bad. Thanks for the recap, Andy. Let's now go to Mike and let's get your recap of last week's action.
Sure. So the Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins play, we're so used in today's world, whether it be Twitter through text to be using terms like OMG, LOL, and we say those things and we don't really mean it. We don't actually have the visceral reaction that we type in. But I can tell you that watching that play at the end of the game, I got up out of my recliner and screamed, "Oh my God," when it happened. So really granted, it's a regular season game. are we really going to remember it down the road? A little bit, but it wasn't like a playoff thing or something that decided a championship or an elimination game, but just one of the more just remarkable like feats of athleticism that you would see, just because Kyler Murray should have gotten sacked on that play, and then to scramble around, throw the ball against his body like that, and then to have Hopkins catch the ball jumping over 3 defenders was really just remarkable to watch happen and absolutely exciting. As a Giants fan, or I should say a pessimistic Giants fan, as I am right now, this is almost a double-edged sword because look, they're 3-7 and they're in the heart of this NFC East race, which is frankly remarkable. So of course they got out to that 14-3 lead at halftime. Were able to hold on despite the strong third quarter from the Eagles, but it's like I'm watching this team. They've won 2 in a row now, and you're like, well, all right, it's nice to see improvement, but do you really want them to play well enough to keep Dave Gettleman around? I mean, I like to see them playing well, but I want Gettleman out of here as fast as possible. So, nice job by the Giants, but hopefully this does not convince Mr. Mara to keep Dave Gettleman around. That's not something we want to see. What else was notable from the NFL? The Drew Brees injury going into that game confirmed today with the multiple fractured ribs and the punctured lung. So they're saying 2 weeks. I'm going to say that seems like a bit of a optimistic estimate for an injury like that to a 40-year-old guy, but we'll see. Who knows? So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Jameis Winston. The Ravens-Pats game. Now, look, the Ravens obviously are not playing as well as they were, particularly Lamar Jackson. But a game like that, it's hard to draw all that much out of it. When you see conditions like that, it just totally changes how you can game plan, what you can scheme up. So wasn't shocked to see the Patriots win that game in conditions like that, because it just kind of, it's crazy to try to play in conditions like that. Lions, Washington, notable, if anything, for that, what was it, 58 or 59-yard field goal by Matt Prater to win the game. So, he's done that a number of times throughout his career. In fact, Tim Tebow can thank most of the acclaim and praise that he got that year. A lot of it came off of Matt Prater field goals from 55 yards out and further. So no surprise to see him doing that. An absolute offensive display by the Bucs last week, bouncing back from that just really pathetic performance they put forth against the New Orleans Saints. College football, John kind of hit on this. Really, I think the big story was that there were 6 games involving top 25 teams that got either canceled or postponed last week. And we don't want to make the show about COVID and what's going on, but with the way the virus has had this resurgent second wave, we're teetering in the balance here with these college and NFL seasons. Although, I think all of us thought that baseball was completely screwed when the whole thing with the Marlins happened and they managed to finish the season. So I'm not going to, call it as of right now, but we're in a precarious spot. That's for absolute sure. Notre Dame, they took care of business. Now, as a Notre Dame fan, you had to be thinking, well, the last time Notre Dame went on the road and beat a number one, or not on the road, excuse me, they were at home. The last time Notre Dame beat a top-ranked team was against Florida State in '93, and they followed it up by losing to Boston College the next week. So, I mean, really, the stars were aligned here. They had just beaten Clemson, playing Boston College with Jukovic, the quarterback transfer from Notre Dame, now leading the Eagles at the helm. So stars were definitely aligned. You were just like, oh, well, wouldn't this be typical Notre Dame if they lost? But they were able to take care of business, even if perhaps letting BC put up 31 was a bit disconcerting. But 45 points by Notre Dame, good offensive performance. Terrible job by Rutgers, who, of course, went out and beat Michigan State on the road, lost to Indiana, and then lost to Ohio State, but didn't get completely embarrassed. And it definitely had shown signs of major improvement, but they were up 20-10 halfway through the third quarter, and they ended up losing 23-20 to a terrible Illinois team, coached by Lovie Smith, who just seems completely lost. So really the first big blemish on the second Greg Schiano era at Rutgers. Anything else notable with college football? Well, Wisconsin coming off their COVID break and just absolutely thumping Michigan at Michigan. So you wonder how much longer the Jim Harbaugh era is going to last at Michigan. USC pulling the rabbit out of their ass again with a close win over Arizona. Those Penn State now 0-4. So I guess, that's somewhat surprising. Nebraska getting the win there. A extremely high-scoring game between Wake Forest and North Carolina, with North Carolina putting up 59 points and scoring 28 points in the fourth quarter to take that win. So a good comeback by North Carolina. The game against Notre Dame, I think it's not this week. It might be next week. So that should be pretty interesting. But that should do it for my recap of the NFL and college from last week.
You pointed out two big teams from the Big Ten that really look like they've quit. Michigan is a big one. That's a great call. Penn State too. My goodness. Andy, did you have something on that too?
I'm just saying, I just blurted out James Franklin because he's a total clown. And I wish I had been fading Penn State a little more. I think I only bet against him when they played Ohio State, but I just can't get into Big Ten pigskin, so I just don't really bet it that often.
It's tough. I've been trying to bet some of these games too, and it's just been frustrating. I'm not even trying anymore, except for one, which I might bring up a little bit later. Okay, that's pretty good. I think we've got a pretty good summation of last week's action. I mean, we had to do both of the sports at the same time, so let's go right to the picks. And we will start with my own picks. As we do that, we'll see if there's a rally ahead for any of these teams over in the MACtion. I think the one that might have a chance is Central Michigan, but it feels like they're down by 50, even though they're only down by 15. So we'll update you on that in a little bit. First, let's get to my picks, and we begin with pulling up the sheet that has my picks on it. Okay. There we go. All right, here we go. Game number one from my slate of 4 picks. We're going to do them all in one sitting. Andy Reid off the bye. Tried and true for decades. I really think this will work again. The last time that this failed was back in 2017, at least. It may have been more sooner than that, but that's a notable one because they lost to the Giants 12-9 in overtime. This was long enough ago that it predated Patrick Mahomes and not Kelsey. I think Kelsey was in that game, which is crazy enough. But that was a different era. So this time we got the Chiefs, who already lost to the Raiders, coming off the bye, wanting revenge on Sunday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes is not going to let the Raiders beat them again. So I'm going to take the Chiefs laying the 7 at the Raiders, game number 1. All right, game number 2 is earlier in that day. And, if we thought USC was struggling to play the proper, consistent level of football every week, well, the Steelers are pretty bad at that too. They did a nice job finally against the weak team in Cincinnati. They shut them down pretty handily, and they won that one easily. But I think it's going to be different in Jacksonville this coming weekend. Now, it's not the easiest thing to expect the team with a new guy named Jake Luton to go out and cover a 10-point spread against one of the better teams, the best team by the record in the AFC, and one of the better teams overall in the NFL, arguably the best in the Steelers. But the Steelers tend to play down their competition, specifically on defense. I expect a lot of points in this game. So I'm going to go Jaguars +10 in game 2. Game 3, we go to college. And look, this is something that USC is going to have to just prove themselves to be able to cover a point spread before anybody starts to take them. Laying points, getting points, whatever. I'm going to go with Utah getting 3 at home in what has historically been their game against USC. Every time they play in Salt Lake City, Utah beats them. Now, it's completely flipped when you go to LA. I mean, USC just trashes Utah whenever they play at the Coliseum. But, man, when they go to Utah, it is Utah all the way. And their defense and their superior coaching should be enough to carry them. I think they're going to win the game. I think Utah will take game number 3 here against USC by 3 points. Game number 4 is the one I was teasing to my friends here on Twitter. I'm calling for a big upset this week, and it's going to be Central Florida getting 6 against Cincinnati. I love this when it was Central Florida getting 4. I was shocked when they went up to a touchdown. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm taking Central Florida. Who goes into Central Florida and comes out of there with a blowout win? Very few teams. Tulane went there this year. They won by 8. But that's not called. I wouldn't call that a blowout. So I really think that Cincinnati is going to get tested. It's going to be a tough game. And I'm looking forward to it. It should be a great one. So Central Florida +6, Utah +3, Jaguars +10, and Chiefs -7 for the elongated football picks in week number 11. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. So that takes us to Ron's picks, and we'll go through these really quickly. Okay, so Ron's picks. From the NFL, he likes the Dolphins, giving 3.5 at the Broncos. The Broncos looked absolutely awful against the Raiders a week ago, and the Dolphins will try to ride the wave. Game number 2 for Ron. He's going to continue the Patriots train, giving 2.5 at the Texans. I don't have anything else to say. Game number 3 for Ron is Boise State giving 14.5 at Hawaii. And game number 4 for Ron is Maryland giving 6.5 at home against Michigan State, who, as we established earlier in the program, are really bad. Michigan State is just bad. So, once again, Ron has Dolphins -3.5, Patriots -2.5, Boise State -14.5, and Maryland -6.5, week number 11. Whew. Okay, Andy. Got your breath ready? I'm ready for your picks here in week number 11.
Okay, Dave, thanks. So game number 1, I'm going to go checker on a checker with you. I'm going to take Kansas City giving – see, I saw 7.5 this morning, but, I mean, it's your show, so you pick the line. I don't care if it's 7 or 7.5. Doesn't really matter to me. But I'm going to take the Chiefs for the same reasons that you gave. Also, the Raiders defense are dealing with a major COVID scenario, I guess, where a lot of their defensive line, they can't practice because of whatever it is, they're close contact with other people with the virus. So they're still scheduled to play, obviously, but I don't think they can practice, and they need to have a bunch of negative tests. And then the revenge is the dish served cold, because we all know the Raiders upset the Chiefs about a month ago, so you would expect the Chiefs want to pay back the Raiders. And then, I mean, the Raiders looked really good last week, but this is a different animal. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. So give me the Chiefs -7 or -7.5. It's your call, Dave. And then game number 2, I was either going to take I'm definitely going to take Green Bay in real life, but for the show.
Uh-oh. Andy, I know we were having problems with the laptop. Do we still have them on the... No. We may have possibly lost Andy. I don't hear him right now. I'm guessing he's taking the Colts with that next pick. So we'll see how. We'll get him back in just a bit. I can't hear him at all. That's just weird. So let me just go ahead and just move it ahead, and we will then go to John's picks here on the program. And John, I'll give you a chance to unmute yourself. There you go. Okay. When you're ready, we're ready for your picks.
All right, Dave. Yeah, it looks like Andy's logging off and coming back in, so we'll get the rest of his in a minute, I guess. All right, so we'll start in college, and I will take for the first pick, I'm going to go Oregon State plus 3.5 against Cal. Cal just looked completely inept on Sunday at UCLA. I think they only put up 160 yards of offense against that horrid UCLA defense, which was completely gashed by Colorado, and Cal couldn't do anything. I just did not like what I saw at all. The second game might play a little bit better, but their offense has always been a liability. I know they were a little bit better last year, but missing some pieces this year. Who knows? But they look really terrible. I'm not sure why they're favored on the road in this matchup. I figure this would be more of a pick 'em. I mean, Oregon State is 0-2, but they played competitively at Washington. They could have won last week. The first game was a little disappointing against Washington State, but they got 2 games under their belt, and I just think this line is not right. So I'm going to go Oregon State plus 3.5 for the first game. And for the second game, I'm going to take Kansas State plus 11 at Iowa State. I just think this is, again, just way too many points. Kansas State has a really good defense, very good coaching. And I've not been a fan of Matt Campbell this year and Brock Purdy. Just way too many turnovers. I just think this will be just a close defensive game, decided by like one score, like a touchdown. So in that scenario, give me Kansas State plus 11 for the second college pick. So, and then for the NFL, I'm going to start off with, let me just get the right line here for you. So I'm going to go Atlanta plus 5 at New Orleans. Obviously, we talked about it before. Drew Brees not being, injured with his cracked ribs, punctured lung, the whole bit. He's going to be out for a while. So now we get the Jameis Winston experience back once again. And I don't know. I mean, we remember him in Tampa being just completely turnover prone. Obviously he doesn't have as good as receivers here with the Saints. Kamara's obviously fantastic, but his defense is obviously better. But I just think this is just going to be a really close game. I don't know. Drew Brees is worth how many points to the spread? Like, was this spread going to be 9 with Drew Brees? Like, I don't know. This feels like this should be under 3. In my opinion, this should be like -2 or -3. So at least this is a pretty big rivalry between these two teams. Atlanta's been playing better, and I just think this is going to be, again, it's going to be a close game over a field goal. Give me the Falcons plus 5. And then for pick 2, my 2 options were 2 games you guys already taken. I was either going to go with the Jaguars or I was going to go with the Dolphins. So I'll go with the Dolphins. Checker with Ron's pick. It is -3.5, which worries you a little bit, but I mean, Drew Lock has just played so bad the last few weeks. Every single game, he's just put into the Denver into a huge hole with his turnovers. And against the Chargers, they got out of it, but in some of these other games, they just couldn't come back. It's just all garbage time stuff. Miami is just playing so well right now, especially on defense. Tua has gotten better week by week. The first week against the Rams, he did nothing. And they just won that with defense and special teams. But the last couple of weeks, he's made enough plays, and Miami is so well coached with Flores. I think it's a huge mismatch in this game against Fangio for Denver. So I know it's a square play, but I just see Miami's defense forcing turnovers, Tua continuing to play well and not make mistakes, and the Dolphins will win. So to recap, so for the NFL, we had Atlanta plus 5, Miami -3.5, and then for college, we had Kansas State plus 11. And then Oregon State plus 3.5.
All right, thank you very much, John. Pretty good, and from the standpoint of, especially the NFL ones, those are pretty interesting spots. So Andy's still trying to rejoin us. He's restarting his system, and we'll hear from him shortly. I am going to issue a correction on the Chiefs pick because, for the sake of accuracy, especially since the line's even going to go up even more over the course of the week, I think it would be fair to just have us both take the Chiefs at 7.5. So I will adjust mine to match Andy's at 7.5. When he comes back, I'll let him know the same. So meanwhile, we go to Mike in North Jersey. And Mike, it is time for us to get your picks for the NFL and college too. Sorry.
Okay, well, since you led off with the NFL, I will start with my NFL picks then. I'm going to take the Packers +2 at the Colts. Now, the Colts, they've been a little bit inconsistent with their results this year. And I think that based off of their, let's be honest, very impressive win against the Titans that they're getting a little bit more credit than they otherwise normally would. If you look at their offense, Rivers has been proficient, but he hasn't been extraordinary by any means. And then if you look at their rushing attack, they're averaging under 4 yards a carry as a team. So their offense is a little bit limited. And Rodgers has really had, not that he wasn't great in the last couple of years, but he's really had this sort of renaissance back to his, absolute peak this year with how he's playing. So I just think you take Aaron Rodgers, you put him indoors when crowd noise is not going to be anywhere near as much of a factor as it would normally be. I'm going to take him if you're laying points or if he's getting points, excuse me. Even so, it's on the road. So give me the Packers +2 against the Indianapolis Colts. My next pick, I am going to go head-to-head against John. And I'm going to take the Saints -5 at home against the Falcons. Now, here's my basis for this. I know Breeze has had a pretty good year, but I think, honestly, if you could hook Sean Payton up to a lie detector or give him some sort of truth serum, he would want to see what this team and this offense could actually do with Jameis Winston at the helm. I know that Winston threw 30 interceptions last year, but he also threw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And you know what? Besides, he's really the only thing that's really ever stopped Winston in his life, or in his NFL career, I should say, is himself. So supposedly he had this eye issue, which is kind of it's been corrected through either, I think it was laser eye surgery he had. He's been around Sean Payton and Drew Brees. I just think it's a really good environment for him. So I will be interested to see what this team does with Jameis Winston at the helm. I know there's been some talk on ESPN about, should they go with Taysom Hill? If they were going to go with Taysom Hill, he would have played last year over Teddy Bridgewater, and that's not what happened. So you'll see Hill in his normal, getting in for gadget plays and just being that jack of all trades kind of guy. Listen, I understand where John's coming from. The Falcons, they had a couple losses early on, well documented, where they should have won, and they absolutely fell apart. But I just look at their last 2 wins. Carolina's going down the drain. They beat them, so what? And they beat Denver, and as John also alluded to, who just has a terrible quarterback in Drew Lock. So I'm not going to get crazy about them. They did have the very nice win against Minnesota, 40-23. But I just think that having Winston at the helm of this offense is intriguing. Now, this could come back to bite me in the ass because he might show up there and throw 3 interceptions. But I do think there's a chance that with his ability to throw the ball down the field, you see the Saints offense open up a little bit more so than they would do with Breeze. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen there, and I'll take the Saints in the Superdome -5. Now, for my college football picks, Dave, I will take a game that will be near and dear to your heart this week, and that is Utah, who will be getting 3 points at home versus the Southern California Trojans.
Love this.
Now, look, USC is 2-0, but they probably should be 0-2. A factor I think going to this game is I read today Willingham said, quote, that Utah is pretty much over the whole COVID scenario. I know that if they had to play last week at the Rose Bowl, they would have been in trouble because apparently they had players out, guys who couldn't play either because they tested positive or because of the close contact and the contact tracing had to sit out. But apparently they're in much better shape. Utah they return a lot of their guys on offense from their campaign last year. They're losing a lot on defense, so they're going to have to make that up. But Utah at home historically does well against the spread. They've done well against USC against the spread recently. And I just think that you're going to have USC go up to Utah, which is at elevation, and the game temperature is supposed to be 26 degrees at kickoff. That's just going to be a strange environment for them to play in. So I actually, for my actual wagers, I took this game Utah money line, but for the purposes of your picks, I'll take Utah +3 against USC. My second pick, I'm going to go to the American Conference, and I'm going to take Cincinnati -5.5 at UCF. Now, look, when you evaluate games, I think sometimes you have to remember this general principle that the line is not necessarily based on what they expect the exact score to be or what they think the margin is between the two teams. It's usually very close, but the line is really about trying to get money to divvy up on both sides, 50% on both sides. So if the house loses, they don't get completely screwed. Now, UCF, because of their recent history with the undefeated season, they have that name recognition for more of a casual bettor than someone like Cincinnati does. So I think in that instance, they're getting a few more points, or a couple more points at least, than they otherwise normally would if they didn't have that advantage. Besides that point, look, UCF has been playing pretty well lately since they had the 2 games in a row that they lost. One was to Memphis, and who else did they lose to here? Well, one of the game they lost 2 games in a row. Then they've won 3 in a row going to this quarterback they have, Dylan Gabriel. He's put up great stats, not taking anything away from him. But the problem UCF has is that their defense against the run is terrible, and their defense generally is just not very good. With how Cincinnati can run the ball, I think that they can win the time of possession. They could frustrate, and the way Cincinnati can play defense themselves, they can frustrate the UCF offense, who will try to, of course, run and gun it down the field, get a few quick possessions on them, and then control the clock. Desmond Ridder is quietly having one of the best seasons of anyone in college football. If he won't win the Heisman Trophy, but if Cincinnati can run the table and go undefeated, he'll certainly get some consideration. So I just like this undefeated Cincinnati team going into Central Florida. Like 5.5, it's a little bit more than I'd want it to be, but Cincinnati's been good to me in the past on this program, picking them. So I'm going to hope that their luck continues for me, and I will take the Cincinnati Bearcats minus 5.5 at UCF.
Well, as it turns out, Mike, you have gone checker and a checker with the USC game. We both have Utah, but we're head to head on the Cincinnati game. That is going to be a show. Very good stuff. So I'm going to adjust my line to plus 5.5, just so it mirrors yours, because I feel like that's in the interest of fairness, similar to what I did with Andy's pick. That is going to be a fun. I'm really looking forward to that game. I really am. Andy is having a tough time getting back on the call with us, so why don't we do this? I'm going to go move ahead, and I'm just going to show you these games. We're running out of time for the football part of the show anyway. So let's take a look at what we have over here. These are the featured games for the weekend. All these are really good. Like Cardinals Seahawks on Thursday night, meaning tonight if you're watching this the next day. Boy, what an amazing matchup of points that could be. That could be really, really good. Titans Ravens coming up on Sunday afternoon. Packers Colts in the late window. Chiefs Raiders. Maybe that's not that great a game because I feel like the Chiefs are going to blow them out. But then the Rams and the Bucks. That's interesting. I don't know who's going to win that one. Wait, let me see if we have Andy back. Andy, do we have you back on the air with us?
I'm back. I'm not going to turn on my camera. My computer must be Jim, or might just be I have bad Wi-Fi at the moment because it's windy and rainy, LL Seattle. But I'm here for now.
All right, no problem. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Let's leave the camera off. We can probably all turn our cameras off at this point because I feel like we have majority cameras off. So let's take a couple of things. I am going to change my Chiefs picks to 7.5 because I feel like that's the most accurate. I'm just cheating if I do 7. It doesn't matter. They're going to win by like 10 plus. So let's get the rest of your picks, Andy, when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, I'll be quick. So I don't know when I cut off, but I was I was undecided with the Packers, which I definitely will take in real life. But for the podcast, I'm gonna be a clown and take the Browns. I hate them, but I'm gonna take them anyway, giving 3.5. John mentioned it could be bad weather, windy and rainy, and the Eagles just can't get out of their own way right now. And I want to see chaos. So although someone has to come out of the NFC East, I want to see all the NFC East lose their games when they're not playing, and NFC East versus AFC. Just lose as many out of the division games as possible. So, and as we documented last week, the Eagles are just a hot mess. And to be fair, the Browns are actually playing halfway decent right now. Baker is very much beneficial with the two running backs. Their defense is always pretty good, and Stefanski seems to be several steps up from Freddie Kitchens. So give me the Browns for the second NFL game. College was really hard to find games. So game number 1, I'll take San Jose State, giving 2.5 versus Fresno. I'm just going to ride San Jose State till they don't cover a game. And it should be an entertaining game. Two of the better teams out of the Mountain West. Give me the Spartans for game number 1. And game number 2, I'm going to take Arizona getting 11.5 on the road up in Seattle against the Huskies. Although I only watched that Arizona USC game with about a half an eyeball on the computer, it did seem like they were able to score against USC. And then I was not impressed with Washington's offense against Oregon State. So I'm surprised that this line is so high. Maybe it's a trap I'm stepping in. Maybe it's not. But give me Kevin Sumlin getting 11.5 for my second game in college.
Okay, very good, Andy. Thank you very much, and good luck. So just to review for everybody, we have all of our picks in. We've done them all in one sitting. Good luck to the picks, everybody, and hopefully good success for everyone. And Mike and I are head-to-head on the UCF Cincinnati game. I really am looking forward to that game. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's one of our featured games here per the rating of yours truly. But seriously, look, that's going to be a great game. And I think the Cincinnati drive for the New Year's 6 is going to be great. Indiana, Ohio State, not going to be great, but it's going to be a bonus pick for me. I think Ohio State's going to cover the 20.5 in that one. Generous usage of Liberty for this list, but Liberty, NC State, if you don't get anything else, you get points. It's going to be a really high-scoring game. USC, Utah at the end of the night, whereas a lot of us are on Utah for that game, and I don't see any reason why that would go differently. So that's pretty much it for me. But if you want to talk about any of the upcoming action, we can as we do our final football thoughts. And John, I'm going to start with you because I haven't heard from you in a bit. Let's give it to you for this week's action plus final thoughts for football, and then we'll go to golf.
Yeah, I noticed, Dave, you didn't include Wisconsin Northwestern on there. It's a ranked matchup. Come
that was
on,
deliberate. Yeah, I know.
Give some love to the Big Ten, right? No, I'm kidding. No, I will say Wisconsin has been impressive. I mean, Michigan could be a complete dumpster fire, and Harbaugh could be gone, but Graham Mertz looks really good, and he was a highly touted recruit for them, and he's been playing great so far. So, we'll see if it's a Ohio State Wisconsin Big Ten title game. We'll see if that materializes, but he looks great so far. I tend to agree with. I know you guys have the dueling picks on the Cincinnati UCF game. I tend to like Cincinnati a lot in that game. I mean, their defense is so good, and like we saw when they played Memphis and when they played SMU, they can shut down like these spread, high tempo offenses. And I mean, UCF is like the best of the best when it comes to that. But I think Cincinnati will. I think they're going to do enough, and that their offense is better this year. So they'll shut down UCF enough, and their offense will do more than usual, and I think they'll get the win. UCF got shut down by Tulsa. If you remember earlier on in the year, they were like ahead 24-3 or something, and then didn't score a point the rest of the game, and Tulsa's defense really dominated, and I could see Cincinnati doing that. So I tend to agree with Mike on that pick. I agree with you guys on that Utah pick. That'll be a good late night chase kind of game. Liberty, NC State. I mean, whatever. I mean, Liberty's just been beating bad teams all year. We'll see what happens once they play an ACC team. One other thing I'll mention about college, due to like all these postponements and cancellations, whatever, the 3:30 CBS game this week is Mountain West. It's San Diego State at Nevada, and that was like my third pick. I was going to go with Nevada. I think they're going to win that as a home dog. They're like getting 2 or 3. I think that's a great pick. I'm just going to keep fading Brady Hoke, and Nevada has this quarterback, Carson Strong, has just played great this year. He's got like 17 touchdowns, 1 interception, 70% completion percentage. And if you watch their games, every like play they're throwing it deep down the field, like 30 yards. It's really fun to watch, and good they get a CBS game for the Mountain West, so good for them. So that's for college, and then for NFL, yeah, you had the schedule up there. It should be an interesting week. Tomorrow night should be plenty of points. I kind of mentioned the Packers on Sunday. I think they were going to be like more focused, honestly, with crowd noise and indoors. I mean, the last two games have been weather games in Green Bay, and you'd think the Packers would be good in weather, but the kind of offense they run right now, it honestly might be better for them to be in a more controlled environment. So yeah, it should be. We actually had some top 25 matchups this week that, fingers crossed, are still scheduled. I know last week we were looking good at the schedule, and then a shitload of games got canceled on Thursday and Friday. So I mean, we're not out of the woods yet, but as of now, the slate is looking pretty good.
Yeah, I like it too. It'll be good. I mean, much better college weekend, we hope, for the weekend. Should be good stuff. So, final football thoughts and the look ahead. Let's go back to you, Andy.
Yeah, John, I was going to mention that CBS game too. I'll be all into that. I'm guessing Gary and Brad were supposed to do Ole Miss, Texas A&M, but
Yep.
So that's good. Throw Mountain West a bone, and those are two fun teams. As we all know, this program loves Mountain West football, degenerate special, and Nevada seems to be good, and San Diego State, new identity, no more Rocky Long, and it's at Brady Hope. But yeah, I'll be into that game. Another Mountain West tidbit for those that were enjoying fading Utah State. Gary Anderson, he got fired. They still probably suck, so if you still enjoy fading him, go for it. That Liberty game, Dave, you mentioned, it's funny. Hugh Freeze is probably gonna get a nice job next year. So you don't know how life works. Maybe that whole prostitution situation at Ole Miss or what. I don't remember the details of why he got fired from Ole Miss, but I think it had something to do with like either escorts or prostitutes. But he's gonna get a good, big job again at some point. He's parlaying the success he's had at Liberty. And then another coaching scenario. So South Carolina fired Will Muschamp. And now like Mike Bobo is the interim head coach. And Mike Bobo may be one of the bigger Mongos in college football. So subtraction by subtraction for South Carolina. And Mike Bobo, I mean, he gets fired by Colorado State, and now he gets to, for not much longer, get to be a head coach of an SEC school. So it's funny how these moves work themselves out. And I'll probably watch that Indiana-Ohio State game. Based on the line, it seems like the odds makers are suggesting that Indiana is going to be in a, jump up to another level with Ohio State. But, we'll see. You gotta play the game to see what happens. And then, by Saturday morning, there'll probably be more games that stick out and will fire on. And for NFL, I think that game tomorrow has potential to be a real doozy. And that's about it. I'm really interested to see how Seattle responds. It's Pete Carroll versus Cliff Kingsbury. So, I mean, you might as well just have, two hamsters running on a wheel.
That over under is wild. It's, what is it? Is it up to 58 now, or is it 57?
See. I didn't look, but let me see. You guys like over, it's 50. I see 57.5, but this might just be like a aggregate website, not a real line.
Seems to be what it is at Circa and Westgate, so maybe that's probably it. John, would you take a chance on that over? That is a crazy. I mean, those are two.
I mean, I don't know. Arizona had been going way under on a bunch of their games just because they kind of stall sometimes in the red zone. And that's what I was kind of counting on last week. And it actually happened if you remember, it was like 23-9 in the third quarter versus the Bills. And then touchdowns just kind of exploded. I mean, that's a lot for an NFL game. Yeah. I would lean under, but I'm not betting it. I might bet the Seahawks actually. It's kind of a good, was it buy low, sell high kind of thing. Like they're after coming off a couple losses, everyone's down on them. I still think if we're comparing, them two coaches as hamsters running on a wheel, I think Carroll can do the wheel a little bit better than Kingsbury at this point. And I think, they'll let Russ cook in this game. I don't think Arizona will be able to stop them. Seattle probably won't stop Arizona either, but I think there'll be enough red zone stops that the game will just go under slightly. I could see this being 31-23 or 31-24, something like that.
Yeah, I feel like everything has to go right with an NFL game if you're going to hit that kind of number. Everything has to go right on an offensive standpoint. So it'll be a fun game. I like Seattle too, but man, it might be worth it just to play the money line because I've seen scenarios where Seattle wins by exactly 1 point and they were giving 1 point, and it was like, really, guys? that happens a lot with those guys. So, Michael, let me give it to you for any additional football thoughts, and then we'll go to golf.
And not much to add. The over-under for Seahawks Cardinals is on an actual sports book, 57.5 right here on DraftKings Sportsbook, which actually does kind of remind me, because we have legal gambling in New Jersey. We actually legalized marijuana a couple of weeks ago. So I've had a lot of fun laughing at some of my college friends, because I went to college in New York State with basically all people from New York State, and they used to rag on me from being from Jersey. But now we have legalized sports gambling and legal marijuana, and they don't have either. So wouldn't you rather be living in Jersey? But just generally in football, I kind of touched on this. Right now we already have 5 top 25 games that have been postponed for this week in college. And with how this virus is going, I'm just going to be keeping my fingers crossed the next couple of days that we don't see more cancellations and stuff like that. In terms of specific games, I'll keep an eye on that USC Indiana game early on, just to see if Indiana can make it more of it is a top 10 game, both teams. But as Andy alluded to, the line makers don't seem to think it's going to be very competitive. So we'll keep an eye on that. And yeah, that Cardinals Seahawks game, and which is often, Thursday night game is often just pretty meh, but that should be an interesting one. So I'll definitely have my eye on that as well.
I don't think Indiana's played a good team yet. That's my feeling on that, because they played Michigan State, right? They shut them out. They played Michigan. They kicked them around. They played Penn State, who they got lucky. They obviously Penn State outplayed them in that game, but they won in overtime. So that's the miracle win there. And then they played Rutgers. I think they played Rutgers too, right? Right, Mike? I'm trying to remember. They did.
Yes, they did play Rutgers.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that Ohio State will show everybody how good this team really is on Saturday, and I'll just leave it at that. So, guys, we are done with football, and I'll just briefly show you these 506 Sports maps on YouTube. But now we can move ahead towards the big topic on our program tonight, and that is, oh yeah, we did that too. On YouTube, we present to you the 2020 Masters Golf Recap, and also on our podcast feed. Mike, John, and Andy are all here with us to talk about Dustin Johnson's huge win and an incredible moment of dominance. Only 4 bogeys the entire weekend, which is extraordinary. And I believe, Mike can correct me, he set a record for the lowest score in a Masters tournament. It was a big weekend for Dustin Johnson, so much so that there isn't a whole lot to talk about in terms of the competition, because he was ahead for 2 rounds solid. It was really quite a show from his point for as far as he was concerned. So I'm happy for Dustin. Great win for him. And now let's talk some golf. We talked about the 2020 Masters in this new fall environment, trying to work them out arrangements with the SEC and with the NFL. The SEC wound up being a non-issue because the SEC game was postponed anyway. But the NFL, had everybody start at 4:05, as Andy alluded to some weeks ago when we talked about this tournament. But here we are. And Dustin, what a great job. I can't say enough about how well he played on this weekend. It's been quite wild. So let's talk about this moment of dominance first to start our coverage off. And we have a lot of other things to cover too. But Mike, I'll give it to you first. It was quite, look, I'll be honest, it was kind of boring because nobody else really got within 2 strokes of him the entire weekend. But I wanted to hear what you thought about DJ's performance.
There are certain tournaments heading into a Sunday where regardless of what actually happens during that round, that we're at a pivotal moment in either general golf history or someone's career who is good enough to be remembered long after he passes from this world. This was one of those days because Dustin Johnson is, all of us would agree, maybe the most physically talented player of this generation. He's won, now including this, 15 tournaments in the last, 5 years. He had, going into the win, 23 wins for his career, PGA Tour wins, which in this era is extremely good. And he is right up there with Jack, Arnold Palmer, Tiger for players who have won at least one time a year for like the most consecutive years. The record is 17, held by both Jack and Arnold. Tiger won 14. I think DJ's at 13 now. But in spite of all of this greatness he had going into last week one major. And going into last week, he was 0 for 4 in closing out majors with the 54-hole lead. So you knew that going into this Sunday, that either we were going to see Dustin Johnson get his second major and not completely validate his career. If he ends with 2, it's still going to be a bit of a he won't have reached the heights that he was capable of, but 2 is a lot better than 1. It puts you in a much higher place all time when you talk about the history of this game than just winning a single major. Or he wasn't going to come through, and he would really have cemented his legacy as this generation's Greg Norman. You know, spending all these weeks as the number 1 player in the world, probably being the most, although I would say that Norman was clearly the most talented player of his era. DJ, there's some other guys you can say are right up there with him. But same idea, just this incredible talent who had not won as many majors as he should have and has a knack and a reputation for coughing it up in a big spot. And he answered the bell on Sunday. He really showed me a lot because that round did not start off all that great. The second hole, which really you should birdie, he blows the drive to the right in the woods. Then he leaves. What you cannot do on the second hole on Sunday is leave it short of that bunker on the right, because then you got to pitch over the bunker and you have no green to work with. And he flubs the pitch, and he's able to get up and down from there for par. But then he bogeys 4 and bogeys 5, which, listen, that can happen. But you could tell that he was a little bit off. But then on the 6th hole, he hits this great iron shot to that back right shelf, which is really a small target. He gets through 7, which is also in and of itself a challenging hole. And then from that point on, he really just takes care of business, makes no bogeys after that. He plays the final, when you go and you click on someone's scorecard on Masters.com, they start automatically playing the highlights. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But he plays the last 12 holes at 4 under par. Takes advantage of the par 5s, as he should be able to do with his length. And there was no looking back after that. And it started to get a little bit, I alluded to the bad shots, but Sanjay M got to within 1 shot. But he really just, for a guy with that sort of reputation and who definitely has scars from the past of messing up, to be hitting some loose shots, to see the lead go down to 1 shot and to just steady himself and then really play great golf, that it really just was very impressive. Because I would say one of the indictments I have on players of this era in general is that they are so fundamentally sound, and they come out on tour when they're young, and they have these technically proficient swings, but when you really turn up the heat on them, a lot of them have a tendency not to be able to adjust during the round, and if it starts to go bad, it stays bad. But DJ figured out whatever it was that was going on. He figured it out, and he just started hitting the ball great. And to go on some of his statistical dominance, he hit 60 out of 72 greens for an 83% greens in regulation. That was 4 more than anybody else hit. And his driving accuracy was also, I think it was about 78%. So when you combine someone who is just a prodigious, 44 out of 56 fairways, 78%. So when you combine someone who's just as prodigiously lawn as DJ is off the tee, you have him hitting all these fairways and then just striping it into greens. That's a recipe for success. So his his tee to green game was just absolutely brilliant. And guys, one other thing to bring up, and Dave, as you alluded to, he did set the all-time Masters scoring record, 20 under par. Look, he deserved it. He did it. But look, was this course playing as difficult as it was when Spieth did it, or as relatively difficult it was based on the equipment in Tiger's era in 97 when they both put up 18 under? No. But still, don't take anything away from Dustin Johnson. But I don't want to say there's an asterisk on that, but anytime you see an all-time scoring record, you have to take into account the conditions. But if you go through his last 8 wins, I'm going to do something where Mike does, where he just reads off numbers. But starting with the Century Tournament of Champions in 2018, 8-stroke win, 6-stroke win, 3 strokes, 5 strokes, 1 stroke, 11 strokes, 3 strokes, 5 strokes. He's blowing fields away. So, look, he's 36 years old. You've heard a lot of stuff since then talking about, can the next 10 years be his? He doesn't really have 10 years. He has 5. But these 5 years, I definitely think he can pick up 2, 3, maybe even 4 majors with the way he's playing. So an extremely impressive performance, and one in which DJ put to rest a lot of the demons of his career.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first time I saw that was around 26, when he got his first major, basically. And it was at the U.S. Open. And you thought, oh, man, is he going to blow it again? Goes down the stretch in that year, and he wins. And you do always think about that when he's playing. I mean, even as recently as this year during the 3M, you're like, oh, no, there goes DJ. He's kind of losing it again. Comes out of this, stays mentally focused the entire time. And I agree with you that the 6th hole was a turning point because, M had the bogey and DJ got the putt that he needed. It's big. The shot that he needed before that too, as you talked about. So I can be nothing but happy for him here. It certainly was indeed a turning point in a lot of ways. Let's go to John and let's get your thoughts on DJ's performance.
Yeah, that was just a fabulous recap and summary by Mike. I'll just add a couple things. I mean, his performance, it was just a culmination of what we've been seeing all summer from him. And Dave, it's funny you mentioned the 3M Open. Like, I thought for sure, like when I was just studying the course and doing our FanDuel and whatever, I said to myself, there's no way that he doesn't just completely just destroy this course and shoot like 25 under par. And in the first round, I think he had 3 balls in the water on the front 9 and shoots like 80. I think the 18th hole is like that par 5 over the water. He might have put 3 balls in the water on that hole, if I recall. I was just so infuriated watching that. I'm like, I'm not picking this bum the rest of the year. And of course, he goes on to like have a all-time, great rest of the season. I did have him this past week in FanDuel, but that's besides the point. But the run of play that he had this year, he won in Hartford here at the Travelers, and then he had that 2-week stretch where I think he shot 82 rounds at the Memorial, and then he had that round at the 3M. And you're like, all right, well, that was just kind of a flash in the pan for DJ. And then he comes back and just completely blitzes the field in Boston and wins that event, wins the Tour Championship, and then obviously wins here in Augusta. And just it was I'll mention just Bryson DeChambeau for a second when he made the most asinine comment maybe in the history of golf when he said that Augusta was a par 67 for him. Just completely just ridiculous. But if it's a par 67 for anyone, it might be Dustin Johnson. He just easily birdied the 4 par 5s without a doubt. And his short game and his putting has improved so greatly that, you can get up and down around the greens, get those birdies and then, pick one off somewhere else. And he gets his 20 under for the week. But it's just a phenomenal performance. There was no point in time, even when he was kind of struggling on the front 9. I didn't really think maybe I thought that someone else from the pack could really play well and get him, but I didn't think he was going to completely fold to go to 3 or 4 over for the day. I knew he was going to steady himself and get back into the into the groove and find his swing. And like I said, just a continuation of what we've seen all year. And honestly, if he brings his A game to the course for 4 days, I mean, who in the game of golf can match him shot for shot for 4 days? In my opinion, I think there's only 2 guys. McIlroy, we haven't seen it in a while, but I think McIlroy could match him shot for shot, and I think Jon Rahm could match him shot for shot for 4 days. I think that's it. I think there's nobody else in the game that can match DJ when he plays like this, and clearly no one did. It's Cameron Smith. We might talk about some of the other guys, but literally the only guy in the history of Augusta National to shoot 4 rounds in the 60s, and he didn't even come close to winning, which is just crazy. And again, that makes DeChambeau's comment even more ridiculous. No one's ever shot under 70 for 4 rounds, and this jackass says par 67. Get the hell out of here, man. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, I'm ranting on DeChambeau because that just really annoyed me. But in any event, DJ just completely, dominates the field. And I would agree with Mike. I don't think he's got 10 years. I mean, he's certainly physically fit enough. You see Tiger now is just completely breaking down. I don't see DJ breaking down like that in 10 years. But I'm not going to say he's going to win 10 majors either. I think he could end his career with 5 or 6, which would be amazing. And he's obviously going to win more, other tour events. So he could end up with a 35 win, 4 or 5 major career. And he's, obviously he could get his way into maybe one of the best 10 golfers ever. I don't know. It's a discussion to be had. He's certainly, if he plays like this for the next 5 years, he's well on his way.
And the defense of his Masters Championship will happen in just a few months in April, and I feel like he'll be game for that too. Good times. Thanks for the recap too, John, and both of you guys. You guys are tremendously with the summary. Let's give it to Annie. Do you have any other thoughts as far as DJ?
I mean, those guys nailed it really good, but I always been a fan of DJ. He makes it look so easy, and it's just crazy how long it's been, but then it doesn't feel like it's been that long. 2016 was over 4 years ago. It doesn't feel that long, and you're like, he should have had some more majors between 2016 and last week. I mean, he makes it look so effortlessly. And then when back in the day when he was coughing up those 54-hole leads, it's I don't even remember the Darren Clark one. All you remember about 2011 or whatever, 2010, 2011, whenever Darren Clark won the British Open or the Open, it was well, Darren Clark, this old guy, he did it, but no one really remembers Dustin Johnson had a good chance to win that too. Now, obviously, you remember Dustin Johnson at Chambers Bay because that was just for him to hit those 2 shots on the 18th green, only to 3-putt was remarkable. Obviously, everyone remembers Whistling Straits with the whole bunker mishap. And then I don't really remember his 81 or 82 that well at Pebble Beach. But I remember his Shanghai. It's not a major, but maybe Mike and John are the only ones that remember when he gave up a big 5 or 6 shot lead to Justin Rose at a WGC event in Shanghai a few years ago. But see, when he does stuff like that, you're just as effortlessly as he makes it look, it just shows how golf is so hard sometimes when you have a big lead and you still have to just keep it dialed in and minimize like blow up holes. And so yeah, when Mike was breaking down DJ's first 6 holes, it was kind of jarring to see what he did on 2, because all the announcers say like 2 is an automatic birdie, but he left it short. And when he hit it in the bunker, like, okay, what's going on? And then when Sung Jae got it to within 1, you're like, okay, well, we're dialed in. Like, we're gonna see some drama. But then we didn't, and that's okay. Not every Masters you're gonna get the back 9 where everyone has a chance. In this year, I don't know what happened, but it just had a different feel, obviously. But DJ, in 10 years' time, no one will really care that the back 9 didn't have juice. I mean, we talked about that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after the event. Yeah, the Masters wasn't that close on Sunday, but we'll look back and see Dustin Johnson shot 20 under in that weird November Masters. And I hope he wins more majors, and it does fit. I mean, he had a remarkable year, as you guys mentioned. Like, he won Connecticut, he won Boston. He came in second at the PGA out in San Francisco. So, do you guys know he can dunk a basketball? I mean, they say that every event, it feels like. So, he just makes it look so effortlessly. I'll take his style and demeanor over Bryson any day of the week. Good job, great job out of Dustin. It's amazing, fun to watch.
100%. Could not agree more. And I think over the course of the summer and into the fall, we've really seen just how tough to take Bryson DeChambeau is as well. He won a major, and we're all kind of sitting here getting on him because it just doesn't seem like he respects the game enough, and he doesn't respect the rules enough, and he's always going after officials. So that conveniently takes us to our next segment, the field at the Masters. I think this is not going to be about DeChambeau because he was basically a non-factor. I mean, that guy continues to try to bully his style into every course, and Augusta's not going to let you do that. It's just not going to happen. And it was a second shot event, and his second shots, once again, were not consistent enough to help him stay in the tournament. So he had his little run in the final round. Really didn't matter. It was like window dressing at that point. So I better stop on that because there's so many other people to talk about here. Tiger, who went the entire first round without a bogey. And it was so nerve-wracking for Mike that Mike was texting John and me, and he was very concerned about the outcome, to say the least. But, the course was definitely soft. It was very damp. Such an interesting situation. But there's a lot of people to talk about here, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's go back to Mike, and let's get your feel for the field at the Masters and all the people that went with it.
Yeah, if Tiger had successfully defended this year at what is he, 44 years old, showing absolutely no form going in, I really would have had no choice but to just disassociate myself from this sport. I mean, I would still go out and play every once in a while, but I would just have to stop watching. In all seriousness, though, like after his first round, here were my honest thoughts about him. The way he was hitting the ball was very impressive. Like, one of the big things I talked about last year's Masters was, even though his accuracy off the tee wasn't that great, his just ability to turn the driver over was something that was missing for so many years, but he had it that week last year. Now, he was able to do that this year. We saw it in the first round, but even though he had done well, it's like whatever is going on with him is his speed is just completely gone. So despite his solid first round and his ability to actually turn the driver over, I just thought that over 4 days, even if he had kept playing well, that with what he currently is right now, that he just didn't have the firepower to win. And I will say that I enjoyed that 10 he made on the 12th hole in the fourth round way way too much. But of course, now that the fact that he made 5 birdies in the round after that is one of the great stretches in golf history, according to some people, even though you can go see, this is what always gets me about Tiger. It's like he has these like impressive stretches of golf where over 6 or 7 holes he puts up 4 or 5 birdies. But if you just go every week and you look through like the scorecards of the players in the field, you'll find that someone does that. That's how golf is. When you shoot like 68 or something, you don't just go, okay, well, he made 2 birdies on. Well, I mean, sometimes that'll happen where it's like evenly spaced out, but you just see these things where people go on runs and they have these great stretches. And if Tiger does that, it turns into this, oh my God, can you believe what he did? How great is it? It's like, no, we see that every week. You're just saying it's great because it's Tiger. But anyway, getting back on point to some other guys on the field. I will touch on DeChambeau because I alluded to this in our last podcast following the US Open, that I think some of the stuff I honestly think he likes to troll people with what he says and what he does. And one thing that I just thought of what the explanation must be for it. You were hearing in the practice rounds that he was driving the 3rd hole with a 3-wood. 3rd hole is that short par 4, about 350 yards. But we saw him take out the driver and try to go after it, and he couldn't quite get there. So it almost makes me think that, like, he went out with Larry Mize on Tuesday in the practice round and, like, put one of those distance balls up instead of a tour ball that every pro would use in order to drive the green, because he knew, like, that would make news and people would start to freak out about it and be like, oh, my God, can you believe what DeChambeau did? So, yeah, the guy is just, look, I've met a lot of people in my life, some smart, some not so smart. Generally, people who are really smart don't have to run around and tell you constantly how smart they are. DeChambeau runs around and constantly tells you how smart he is. Look, he is an intelligent guy to some extent, but when you do that, that really just gives off such a bad vibe. He's just so tough to take. So anytime he he just doesn't live up to the expectations, it's really a treat to watch. Other guys in the field, yeah, I won't go on forever with this. McIlroy, same sort of deal. He never can put together 4 rounds here, and he just comes in on a very soft Thursday and shoots a 75. And let's see, he played very well after that with a 66, a 67, and a 69. But he gets another. It seems like every year in the Masters now he finishes in the top 10, but is never in contention. So another one of those. Cameron Smith will be a great trivia question down the road. Who was the first guy ever to shoot 4 rounds in the 60s? And it's going to be him. And like John said, he was 5 strokes off the lead, so he does something no one has ever done before, but doesn't even come close to sniffing the win. I was pretty damn impressed by Sungjae Im. His first ever Masters appearance, 2nd place. I know he's had this, he's played well, but I was a little bit unsure of him just because I feel like his performance at major championships had been a little bit underwhelming up until now. So it's like, all right, is he one of those guys who, we see perform well week in or week out, but when you get to one of those major championship level courses, does he fall back a little bit? But no, that wasn't the case at all. And to my point, if you look at his results, he had missed 3 of the 4 majors he had played in entering the Masters. He had missed the cut. So I don't know, maybe he was nervous or whatever, but I was really impressed with how he hit the ball and how he played in general. What else can we bring up here? Just Brooks Koepka kind of did what I expected him to do. We now know that his really the reason he's played so poorly over the last year is that knee injury, which was supposed to be minor and not supposed to be that bad, apparently the complications from it, like in terms of favoring certain sides or whatever, caused him to tear the labrum in his hip, which is a fairly significant injury for a golfer. So now we understand like what was going on with him and why he played so poorly. So kind of what I expected for him, that he hasn't really had enough reps yet, but it'll be interesting, excuse me, to see what he does next year. And then just I guess a couple other guys that faded over the weekend that was a little bit disappointing. Patrick Cantlay shooting over par on the weekend when he was 8 under par headed in to Saturday was disappointing. Hideki Matsuyama, same thing, even par over the weekend after being 8 under. And where is Paul Casey end up finishing? Because I know he absolutely imploded. Where is he? Yeah. So 65, 74, 71, 77 for Paul Casey, who I think we can sort of shut the door on him winning any majors as he enters his 40s. And also John Rahm, too, only 1 under on the weekend on a soft course. That was a little bit one of the, I guess, general themes, and I'll close on this, is with where this tournament was entering the weekend with just this stacked leaderboard. We had like 5 guys at 8 under par. And a lot of them highly ranked guys, no big names. It would have been nice to maybe see that continue further on into Sunday with DJ pulling away late, but it's not what we happened. But it did speak to where we are a little bit in the game, that we can have deep leaderboards like that, and in future majors we will see something like that go on over the weekend. But it's not what occurred last week in Augusta.
Let me just follow up on a couple things. Number one, any feel for what happened with Schauffele, because he had that really good round in round 1. Did you cover that already? Maybe it was in your summary, but it was kind of interesting how he really tanked in that second round. But when I say tanked, I think he was only 2 over. So it just goes to show you how dominant that Dustin was. But did you have any thoughts on Schauffele specifically, Mike? No? Okay. Well,
no, wait. I'm sorry. I was muted, Dave. No, no, I didn't have any big thoughts on what happened to him in his second round, because he really fell off after that. Just looking at his scorecard, he had a really bad stretch between 4, 6, and 7, and then he doubled 11. So I'm not sure really. He just didn't have his best this week, except for Thursday.
Yeah, okay. I mean, he's pretty young, so I don't think you really worry too much about that. So anyway, let's go to John. Let's get your thought on the rest of the field. Certainly a lot to cover here.
Yeah, I won't mention too much. Some of the guys I mentioned on the show last week for my FanDuel lineup ended up doing pretty well. I did mention Cameron Smith as kind of a sleeper play, and he ends up finishing in second. As I mentioned, the 4 rounds in the 60s, and really his ball striking is just impeccable. I mean, it's just a laser show, and you just really couldn't really make too many putts. I mean, what more can you ask from the guy? Like 4 rounds in the 60s, and you still don't win. I mean, it was just very impressive. And we were introduced to him in America at the Open at Chambers Bay. I think he finished 4th or 5th that year, but he had won some tournaments in Australia as an amateur, and he'll be definitely a player on the major stage. The big thing about Augusta is it takes you a couple times before you really can find the nuances of the course, and you need some experience before you can really win. So I guess that as well makes Im's performance even more impressive, as it was his first time at Augusta, and he played great. And for those of us that follow the tour in and out, I mean, this dude literally plays almost every single week. I think he plays 30 tournaments a year. So he's just a kind of an Ironman player, and it was just very impressive. Like I said, to be your first appearance in the Masters, and you're tied for second. I mean, some of the more heralded players making their first start just did not do well at all, as expected. Matthew Wolff missed the cut. Morikawa missed the cut, but I'm sorry, he made the cut, but he did not do very well. Abe Answer was up there for the first 3 rounds, but had a very poor Sunday. So, again, very impressive for him to have his first major appearance and at Augusta and do this well. If you look at the top 10, I mean, there's a couple surprises in there, like CT Pan. I don't think we've heard from him in over a year. I mean, he won that tournament the week after the last Masters at Hilton Head, and I don't think I've seen his name on a leaderboard since. And I actually forget he even qualified for the Masters. They're showing it on Sunday. I'm like, man, where the hell did CT Pan come from? And he finished tied for 7th. But yeah, McIlroy, just a very disappointing first round. And if he had shot 4 or 5 under that round, he would have been right in it. But again, like he just can't put 4 rounds together. Justin Thomas played well, but he had too many blow-up holes to really contend. I mean, it's just some really, really poor shots from him, which ultimately held him back. Rahm couldn't get really anything going on the weekend, like you guys talked about. But he's obviously still very young. But we need to see him kind of break through here to get a major. I think at some point, else we'll start to, I guess, question his, question if he's ever going to get it done, like we've been doing for many of these players. And then the top 10 rounded out with Webb Simpson, Patrick Reed, Corey Connors. Simpson again, he's just like your professional. Like I don't ever think he'll win a Masters, but like he'll be in the top 10 just about like every year. It's just kind of game that Webb Simpson has. It's just very solid, but like not like his 8 game is nowhere near like Dustin Johnson basically, unless he just had amazing putting week. That would be the only thing that you could say would match DJ in this kind of scenario. Tiger. I mentioned it again last week. Like a great week for him would be like around like top 25, and that's basically where he was until that 10 on the 12th hole. Yeah, and then they kept. What really bugged me is like I know just mention a quick thing about the broadcast. Like the dude's 20 shots behind. I don't need to see his tee shot on the 15th hole. No one cares. Like you want to show him putting out on 18, fine. I don't. That's acceptable. But no one cares about his tee shot on the 15th hole when he's 20 shots behind. Like, were you showing Matthew Wallace's tee shot in the 15th hole? No, you weren't, because he was 20 shots behind. Like that just infuriates me to no end. And I just, in terms of guys who missed the cut, obviously every year there's like 10 to 15 guys that have no chance because they're the past champions and the amateurs and some of the other qualifiers. But in terms of like surprises, let's see here. People were high on, obviously I mentioned Wolf, but again, first timer, I'm not surprised about that at all. Tyrrell Hatton's playing pretty well coming in, so I guess that's kind of a surprise he missed the cut, but he's very, very streaky. So he's a hard guy to figure out when you're like doing picks and bets. Like he could easily win one week and then the next week like do this when he shoots 73, 74. And then I'll mention Jason Kokrak just because he completely derailed my FanDuel team. I had 5 out of 6, and he was just awful and missed the cut. Awful Friday round, I should say. He had a pretty good run on Thursday, but Friday he just was terrible and missed the cut. But I was still able to get second in our pool because I had DJ and Cam Smith, and Lee Westwood was pretty solid. He got a top 25. So that's kind of my take on some of the other players. It was kind of an eclectic top 10, I would say, in terms of the guys that were up there.
Yeah, that was a great job out of you in the FanDuel, by the way. That's a really good spot. If you had Dustin, basically your chances of winning were much, much, much greater than if you didn't. But great job, John. Let's see. What do we have here? Let's go to Andy and let's get your recap of the field at the Masters as well.
Yeah. Rory McIlroy's he's got some ghosts at Augusta, especially on that back 9. But I think he'll cure it at some point. He'll conquer those ghosts at some point. But it was funny getting up at 4:30 a.m. 4 nights straight, or 4 mornings straight. So on Friday morning, he's finishing his round 1, and that was probably when Rory was at its worst, like the Friday morning, his conclusion of round 1, and Dottie Pepper and Ian Baker Finch. Everyone is just kind of, and even Vern, I don't know if Vern was there, but they're like, he is lost. And Dottie Pepper, it was like the version of, LT saying Collinsworth hates the Giants, but it was like Dottie Pepper hates Rory. It was just that first round shooting that 75, and then he straightened it out, rounds 2 through 4. But I mean, he just had a really bad first round. There's nothing else to say about that. But I hope he wins Augusta because I'd like to see him win the career slam. I mean, he's fun to watch. As John Mike mentioned, when Rory's at the pinnacle of his game, I mean, he makes it look just as easy as Dustin. And I was impressed with Sung J M. Dylan Fratelli seems this podcast here is probably aware of Fratelli because he played on those European tour events a few years ago. He's a little tough to take with those weird glasses he wears and the long sleeve. He's just kind of a weird guy. Met Justin Thomas. Mike probably can speak more technical, but it seems like every time Justin Thomas is in contention and either it's like a final round or the late stages of a weekend, his swing just seems to fail him. And I mean, I think at one point he was at minus 12 and it was either 13 or 15. He pulled his second shot into the water and he might have even gone up and down after that to save par, but I think it was 15 to save par. But I mean, he was thinking birdie, obviously, maybe eagle. And that was a bad job out of Justin because he was right there. Rahm, that worm burner, like duck hook hybrid on, I think it was the 8th hole on Saturday. That kind of cooked his goose, and he never really regained his own momentum there. As John mentioned, a disappointing final round from Abraham Answer. I was rooting for him. I was scrolling through my Twitter Sunday morning and read the wrong tweet because it was from Trevor Immelman, and he was like, "Oh, I saw he's got guts. He's got guts." Because Immelman was very intimate with Answer during the President's Cup last year, and he's like, he's not gonna be afraid. Well, so I took Abraham Answer plus 190 over DJ in that final round, and I think Abraham missed like 4 straight, really almost gimme putts. But I think he'll bounce back. It's only a matter of time. Like you guys said, playing your first ever Masters is hard, and you need to kind of play it a bunch of times to get familiar with the course. That's why guys like Larry Mize and his suspenders can hang around at least for a round. But as you guys said, very eccentric top 10. I think even my mom likes to gamble. She bet on Hideki to be the top Asian because you can bet on that on Bovada, but Sungjae was the top Asian, so she lost on that. I was disappointed in Patrick Reed over the weekend. And at one point you had 9 guys at -9 in the middle stages of round 3. I'm sure everyone wished that was in round 4, but that that usually doesn't happen that way. But it's like DJ ended up rising to the top. And my last little tidbit about the field, I saw another tweet on Sunday night, and it has to do with our boy Ricky Fowler, who is now 47th or 48th in the world, but he's he's trending downwards, and so he might not qualify for next year's Masters. And then the other, the comments from other golf degenerates or whatever, he's not gonna get that Tiger event and get those free world ranking points because how Tiger's event, whether it's the Hero Open or whatever it's been a different, but it's been a few names depending on the sponsorship. But I think it's only 12 guys playing it, and it's just you play and you automatically get good world ranking points. So without that, Ricky's actually going to have to perform, early next quarter in 2021 to get a Masters spot. And the clock's ticking for that guy.
He's not getting any younger. That's very true, Andy. And similar to your point earlier on Answer, I was really rooting for him. I mean, guy that I think he was born in Texas, and then he grew up in Mexico, and so he represents Mexico, and he's been doing pretty well in some of these Mexican events. But interesting thing about him is that he doesn't have any actual wins on the normal PGA Tour. And Mike, I'm gonna swing this to you because I just wanted to get some clarification about that. So, did he qualify for the Masters on the strength of the PGA Tour of Australasia win, or the Web.com Tour win, or the now known the Corn Ferry Tour win? Like, what was his qualification?
Which golfer are we talking about, Dave? Sorry.
Oh, this is the answer.
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure how he qualified. I would guess. Well, it's definitely not. It's definitely not through winning. I would guess it has something to do with. Let me see what his world ranking is, because that can get you in too.
Okay. Well, it says here his highest
I'm
ranking
guessing
was
it's either something to do with the FedEx Cup or the world rankings. He definitely hasn't won before. But
Yeah.
What was weird while Mike looks that up, like, people were saying, "Oh, why isn't Daniel Berger in this field?" Well, this was the field that it was as of this March. Like, they weren't adding guys in that did well over the summer. So this, however answer qualified, it was like from last year basically. So it could be it's either the world ranking or something to do with the FedEx Cup is my guess.
okay.
He's ranked
It's very
22nd
interesting.
in the world. So I guess that's how he got in. He must have been in the top 50 whenever the cutoff was.
Okay. Very interesting. That definitely was on my mind all weekend, and he did do pretty well for himself until, as Andy mentioned, the final round where the putter really failed him. So it was easy for me to root for him, and I think he'll be back. First time players in the Masters rarely win the championship. The last to do it was Fuzzy Zeller way back in 1979. So it is exceedingly hard to do. And so, give him a lot of credit for playing as well as he did. So I think that wraps up for the field. Surprises and disappointments are covered in this segment already. So we can get into media coverage. And part of the media coverage includes this website that Masters runs and the apps that they run as well. And the new feature that Mike turned us all on to was the My Group feature, which is part of the video highlight packaging. And you can select your favorite golfers and you just get an endless stream of highlights of all these guys. And it's almost like you're watching them in your own featured group live coverage in a way, because they come in so fast. Like, all these highlights come in really, really fast. So you can just get it all in one sitting. And then if you watch the tracker, it also shows the highlights of their shot on the tracker. And you can actually you can put the tracker on in the My Group to go concurrent with the highlights. Just amazing technology. You just got to make sure you have a fast enough computer to run it, because it was starting to really lag on mine. But otherwise, man, so good. First of all, kudos to the digital stuff, the digital technology, just amazing. TV coverage. You notice that the featured groups and all that used to be on the Masters app for Apple TV, they moved that all to ESPN Plus. I found that to be a little shady. I mean, the Masters makes enough money. Do they really need to be milking ESPN Plus subscriber fees too? I didn't really care for that. And then the TV coverage itself, I'll just leave it to the guys to talk about that. So, Mike, let me give it to you first for media coverage.
Well, I don't have much to say about the television broadcast, because not much has changed. So we've covered that in great detail over the years on the show, but I'll get into the digital platform, because really just one of the things we talked about, like, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, because it would have been the second when Spieth won in 2015, and then he jumped out to the big lead in 2016. One of the things we brought up was that with the way that the Masters presents their broadcast, which is a relatively limited television window, that that one of the issues that they had was, look, we can see things like what happened with Jordan Spieth, where a guy is in the early morning coverage or in the early morning window on Friday, and he jumps out to this big lead, and it kind of puts away the tournament, or at least, obviously there's 36 holes left, but it sets the margin that never gets overcome. And that really what they needed like something integrated into their digital coverage, to, if something was going on the course, that you needed to get to, that they had a way to get us to this. My suggestion was like putting in some booth that could say, okay, well, we're now going to take you to Jordan Spieth because here's what's going on. But what they've done instead is, and this kind of goes along with really one of the goals of the Masters and committee at Augusta National was they wanted to put on like the best show in terms of hosting an event, broadcasting an event. That was always their goal, like from the very beginning, was to do it better than anyone else. So what they've done now is they've come up with this feature where you literally just like hit the star button on the leaderboard and it puts all those guys into your My Group. Then you go on to you click on the live thing, and they just, as soon as the shots come in, they queue them up and they play it for you. So you can watch every shot of whoever you want, just a few seconds basically behind real time. And it's absolutely terrific. You can watch every shot that happens on the course from any player that you want for the entire round. So it's really just a brilliant innovation. It certainly makes up for it certainly makes up, at least for us people that have some semblance of how to utilize the technology, the issue of their television coverage window being smaller than the other majors. I do have a little bit sympathy for like the older fans who might not be as in tune with this. But it is what it is. It's really, it shouldn't be that complicated in today's world to figure it out, but just a brilliant innovation they came up with. And just the further expansion of the featured holes this year is something that should be mentioned. Obviously got overshadowed because this was really a big innovation, but they added 4, 5, and 6 to the featured holes. So when you look at that, that's 4, 5, and 6, then Amen Corners 3 holes, and then they have 15 and 16. So 8 of the holes on the course, you could sit there and you could watch every group come through. So really, it was just a tremendous step forward from the Masters this year with what they were offering on their digital coverage. And I know John had mentioned in our text that he wants to see it on the PGA Tour. I hope it happens too. I have my questions if it will, just because of the amount of like money and technology it would take to make that happen. But hopefully it does. So just a commendable job by the Masters with what they offered us this year in terms of their streaming coverage.
There's no doubt about it. I was really blown away. Just the concept of it. It's amazing vision. I'm just so impressed by how well that was executed, and the amount of logic that goes into that is just incredible. So thank you, Mike, for telling me about it, because I got to enjoy it myself, and it was totally worth it. I'm not sure how you would get that on a TV, because I haven't figured that out yet. Like, I was only able to do it on the computer because the Apple TV app didn't have that feature, which I thought it was a little unusual. But I'm assuming that
Dave,
it was
just to jump in real quick. What I did is I took an HDMI cable and plugged it from my backup laptop that I have for school into the TV and did it that way.
That's not bad. I might do that next time. Yeah, good call. Okay, let's go to John and let's get your thoughts on the media coverage.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, literally every shot from every golfer in the entire tournament. I mean, what's better than that? I mean, just unbelievable. Like to set that up and have the technology and everything is just phenomenal. I mean, you cannot ask for more than that. And actually, the PGA Tour did do this for the Players Championship earlier this year, which obviously was canceled after one round because of COVID. That's when it all started. But they were planning to do that for the the Players Championship. And obviously it was buried on their PGA Tour Live paywall. So it is possible for them to do this. The question is, do they want to spend, the time and money and technology to set that up for literally every single tournament, for every golfer, on every hole, on every course they go to? I mean, that's the question. I think they do have the money to do this. Obviously, it's just a matter of whether it's cost effective for them to do this on the PGA Tour. And we've seen a lot of innovations at the Masters and at the majors kind of trickle down to the PGA Tour. But I think now with golf being so, I guess, more mainstream in terms of gambling and fantasy and all those things, I think, you would have it would honestly be mostly degenerate gamblers and people playing fantasy golf watching those streams of random guys on a Friday afternoon trying to make the cut. But I think it would be worth their time and effort to kind of do that for the PGA Tour anyway. But you cannot say anything else about any bad things about how the Masters expanded their digital coverage. Like you can't ask for anything more. Like what more can they do than this? I guess to give the more coverage on television. But that's I think we've all accepted that that's just not going to happen at this point. So just a tremendous job, and you really can't ask for more. I will say the ESPN Plus was nice for someone like myself because there's no Masters app on like Roku. So I wanted to watch the featured group coverage. Like, okay, I could have watched it on my laptop, but obviously you don't want to watch it on a small screen. I didn't have an HDMI cable, so I just popped on ESPN Plus, and there was the featured group coverage on Thursday and Friday morning. So that was definitely a plus to have that on there. Dave, you mentioned, they're kind of milking subscribers, but that definitely for my instance anyway, that was a good option to have. A couple other things I'll mention. If you notice, like they would never, I could be completely wrong, but I don't remember them having any course reporters in previous years. And this year they had Dottie Pepper on the course, which was a change. And I agree with Andy had mentioned some tweets about her becoming like the Doris Burke of golf, like just being very smug and like arrogant. And I can definitely see that. Yeah, she's a little too much. And as terms of the TV coverage, it is what it is. We've accustomed to it over year. But I don't know what was going on with Trevor Immelman's mic. Like he was just talking way too close to the microphone. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Like his voice was just a little grating after a while. I mean, he had good analysis, but it was just, I think he was just sitting way too close to his microphone. It was just after a little while, it was just getting annoying to hear him talk. But other than that, I think it was, like I said, just the digital improvement they made. You just cannot do any better than that. And really, it puts the other majors to shame. Like we better see every shot from every player at the PGA Championship and the Open next year or the U.S. Open, or else it's going to be they just fail in comparison.
Yeah, it really made a statement, and I got to give the Augusta National a lot of credit for setting all that up. It's incredible. Like I can't say enough either. Andy, let's get your thoughts on the media coverage.
Yeah, it was great. For any sort of grief that the Masters get for their Saturday TV coverage, the stream, the featured groups, and the My Group feature makes up for it tenfold. So it's a good trade-off. And this My Group stuff was amazing. At one point I had like 16 guys, so probably a glutton, a little too much, maybe overkill, because at some point my guys were, I just fell behind a little bit too much. And then every now and then it'd be kind of glitchy, and Tommy Fleetwood would be on the 9th hole, but then they'd show his putt from the 4th hole, and I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. So I don't go too overboard. I think more than like 8 golfers, then it starts to kind of go a little, can't handle the workload. But it was great. The Amen corner, as we all know, is amazing. And then there are a couple more holes that we'd seen this year that we hadn't seen in previous renditions of the Masters. This is the Masters. Like my computer's not that great, and it didn't really freeze all that much. And I could say that about the Masters stream. And then when I watch Sunday Ticket on my computer, sometimes it hums like a kitten, no problems. ESPN as well. For whatever reason, like Fox Sports, like if I watch a stream on there, sometimes it'll glitch. So I don't know, Dave, you're like, all this stuff better than I do. So that's like kind of inside baseball, like why certain cable companies or media companies, their streams hum better than others. But that's another topic for another day. But it was great. I have DirecTV, so you go to like channel 902 and you can just go up and you can go 902, 903, 904, and it's your traditional coverage, your featured groups, Amen corner, holes 15 and 16, and then your companion piece on your laptop could be either your My Group or the leaderboard or, other feature groups. It was you could really fry your brain, which I did, just watching all the action. And just next year, I say this now, maybe kind of cut down on the bets, but I know that won't happen. But like to actually process what's going on, you might not want to have that many bets. But it's amazing. And I know the Masters get some grief for some other things, but as long as IBM is aligned with the Masters, you're probably going to get amazing technology for your viewing privileges. And I forgot that they were going to do that at the Players. And as John alluded to, if there's enough money involved and they can justify their costs on their end, and I think they probably can. If there's enough casual people, look on the Mike Francesa message board, you got people that traditionally probably don't watch golf, but now that if there's a FanDuel every week, you're going to get casual interest, and it's probably only going to get bigger as more states open their boundaries for gambling.
My Group is perfect for FanDuel. It almost seems to be tailor-made for people who use the FanDuel scenario for a given tournament. So I really hope that kind of technology expands into other tournaments, just like John was saying. And ideally that's the case, because then it's going to make all of our FanDuel contests much, much more fun. And Andy, we gotta talk right to whoever congressman or whoever it is over in Washington State to get FanDuel approved for your state. I can't believe it's been this long.
I know. So not to go on a tangent here, but so last year we passed a bill for tribal casinos to have gambling, and it was either going to be tribal or non-tribal, and it was only going to be one or the other. So the tribal casinos, they got the go ahead to get gambling. So the plan was to have sports books in casinos for the 2020 NFL season. And I don't know if it was COVID or what, but they didn't. If you go into a casino now that's on tribal land in the state of Washington, the infrastructure for the sports books are there. They refurbished a regular restaurant and turned it into a sports book. So the kiosks are there, the TVs are there, but they're just not operational. I'm guessing COVID had something to do with the delay, but it's all there. And I think you'll be able to bet, Snoqualmie Casino's app, but it'll only work when you're on the premises or on, Native American land.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it's good if you're going to go there, but if you want to play, DraftKings from your office, you're out of luck. You're still out of luck.
All right. Well, I'll keep cheering those folks on to make it happen for you. All right, let's get to the road ahead. Probably not as much to talk about in this part of the season, but there are a couple of interesting events, and two in Hawaii. The Sony Open is one, and then there's a tournament in Playa del Carmen, and I've been there, and man, it can be a really gorgeous place depending on what part of the beach you're on. So that's going to be a good venue for golf. So back to Mike. Let's get your look at what's coming up ahead.
Well, this week we have a tournament that is in no doubt near and dear to John's heart because of his admiration for Davis Love. But we have the RSM Classic in Sea Island, Georgia, hosted by Davis Love III. So, I'll be tuning into that a little bit. Although honestly, I'm getting to crunch time with my finals coming up here, so I don't know how much time I'm going to have to watch golf after that. Now, normally the RSM Classic traditionally is the event that leads you in. Well, technically, it's still the same season now next year with the wraparound year, but the RSM Classic was traditionally the tournament that would enter in that 5-6 week break until you got to the Tournament of Champions in Hawaii, but that's not going to be the case this year. We're going to have the Mayakoba, which you referred to in Playa del Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
So of course that was the site where Matt Kuchar stiffed the caddy, and it led to that whole that that whole big incident over that. So good memories there. Then they'll be taking a break for 5 weeks, and we'll have the Tournament of Champions, the Sony Open in Hawaii, and away we will go into the winter part of the season. Now, of course, COVID, same thing with where the numbers are going. Golf isn't as susceptible to it because, like, if one player gets it, he can just withdraw, and you don't have everyone together in a team. So I think golf will be able to get by in these next few months, which are going to be tough. But it does seem like we have a vaccine coming. So look, what golf needs to do is tread water. And, I know they're saying June maybe, but I would think that at least it's wishful thinking, but I would think that with where we are with the vaccines, we should be, I think, getting maybe not back to normal, but much closer to some semblance of normality by the time we roll around for the Masters in April. So, RSM Classic, then we'll be down in Mexico, then we have a break. So golf just needs to tread water until the vaccine can alleviate some of the problems that are going on.
Yeah, I hear you there. I was getting some texts from Junkie about the vaccine too, and he felt very hopeful that they might even have fans in baseball stadia before too long, and that would be awesome. I miss it a lot. He's really hoping rooting for me to make opening day at Dodger Stadium, and if that happens, that's great. I'm good. I'm not going to think too far ahead, but certainly there are things, and the election was one of them, that point to perhaps things getting figured out and improving. We'll see. Anyway, this is not a vaccine show. Let's go to John and let's get your thoughts about the road ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's going to be golf on. We'll have an eye on it this week. Got the FanDuel lineup set, and then we'll take a break for Thanksgiving. Then we'll have the Mayakoba event. Interesting that because of the reshuffling of the schedule, usually like this weekend would be the last weekend, but obviously because of everything that's going on and how they had to move things around, they're actually going to take a break for Thanksgiving next week, and then the Mayakoba event will be the first weekend of December, which like you never see a PGA Tour event being played that weekend. But here we are for 2020, and then they'll take the 4-week break as Mike mentioned, and then we'll be back at it again in Hawaii. And yeah, there actually has been more of an uptick in. Obviously, it parallels the country. I think there's like 4 or 5 golfers that withdrew from this week's field with COVID. But Mike is right that it's unless they're like congregating in the locker room together, which I'm pretty sure the tour is not letting that happen. Just like one guy or a couple guys will test positive, and then that'll be it. They'll be out, and the tournament can go on. But so I'm knock on wood. I think golf will be able to keep their schedule as is heading into next year. I mean, fans on the premises. I mean, whatever. I know the Houston event had some last week, which was pretty surprising to me. I mean, it is Texas, but still, like, I just think that's a little, even if it's an outdoor thing, like there shouldn't be fans at these events right now, but alas, whatever. The point is, I think the schedule will remain as is, and we'll get some golf in, the next couple of weeks, and then early next year when, we'll see what other sports are going, but golf definitely, it'll be something there to watch on the weekends. That's for sure.
Yes, I agree with you, John. From the moment that they restarted golf, I really feel like it's been on a nice little run, and you got to give them a lot of credit for getting through all of this, mostly unscathed. I mean, they haven't had an actual event postponed. I mean, other than just to account for the lack of inactivity during COVID, but since the restart, I should say, they haven't had an event postponed, as far as I know. So that's a great sign. And so, golf is situated to that. So it's pretty cool. Okay, Andy, let's get your thoughts on the road ahead.
Yeah. Onward to RSM Classic. It's usually like Davis Love and a bunch of his cronies and people named Hudson Swafford and all, the Georgia Bulldog crew. But this year it's actually a better field because I'm guessing you had such a strong field at Augusta, and Sea Island isn't that too far away, so it's actually a pretty good field. You got a lot of international players. I'll watch more of it this year than previous years, and then like next year, I was just thinking, like, the Phoenix Open is going to be like totally different without like the Mongos there, because I don't think there's going to be fans there in early February, so it's just gonna have a different feel. The Waste Management Open with no fans, you'll actually get to see like the course without the stands and the infrastructure. It'll look like an actual like normal golf course.
And I'm going to give a shout out to one more thing before we close it up tonight. And Mike and John and Andy, I failed to bring up the 6-putt by Danny Lee in our last show. That was spectacular. Back in the U.S. Open, over in September. I've never seen anything like that. And that was just amazing. So I'm just going to, before we go to final thoughts, I wanted your thoughts on that moment, because he really had a fuck it moment way back in September when that went down. Mike, your thoughts on the Danny Lee 6-putt?
I mean, I'd kind of forgotten about that, but it did pop back into my mind. Hey, listen, look, golf is a frustrating endeavor at times, especially when you're a professional and you're playing for money. But it is surprising to see that just for this very simple reason. If you have such little control over your emotions, we all know, all of us here play golf, that it's so mental. And if you get out of it a little bit, you can really just get derailed. So for someone to really lose it like that, to see someone lose it like that, it's surprising that you can make it as a professional on the PGA Tour as Danny Lee did. So, just an absolute Mongo moment for him, but hey, it happens, and it's probably been forgotten for the most part anyway, because Danny Lee's not Phil Mickelson, which everyone will talk about when Phil just got pissed off at the USGA and hit the putt while the ball was still moving. So yeah, that was a crazy thing, though.
Yeah, definitely. Phil had a crazy thing too. It was just a couple weeks ago. Like, remember where he was in if anybody had like a head-to-head match in this tournament, I didn't know which tournament it was. It was a while ago, but like 2 weeks ago, he holes out to beat out another guy, the guy in his group, I guess, and finish it like 3 over instead of 5 over. And it was like, damn, dude, that's crazy. But let me just stay with you, Mike, for final thoughts overall, and then I'll go over to John and Andy.
I'll just sort of reiterate what I opened with, that what we saw to end the major season in 2020 was a moment that we knew was going to really define someone's career. And for what's been such a tough and tragic year, obviously this doesn't bring us back to normal, but to see someone who has in numerous times disappointed, not lived up to his expectations, and blown tournaments, major tournaments in a big spot, to see him come through like that and fulfill some of his potential was a little bit uplifting to see. So a nice golf story, really, to end out the big tournaments of 2020.
Yeah, can't disagree. Okay, John, your final thoughts?
Yeah, no, can't add anything on to that. It was just great to have the Masters being played. It just makes me even more upset that we didn't get the Open this year, that they couldn't, that stupid pandemic insurance that they cashed in on, and we couldn't have the 4th major, which would have made the year, as bad as it was, at least, it still kind of feels incomplete that we didn't have that. So, but overall, it was great to have golf on, and, we'll do it again in April. And just to add one last thing to add on to what Andy mentioned about the Phoenix Open having no fans, like maybe because it's in February, can we get like the amateurs out of Pebble Beach and just have it a professional golfers tournament this year? Maybe because of COVID, like we don't want, all these celebrities and musicians and business insurance men coming in to play with the professionals. Like they could contaminate the golfers. So hopefully maybe no Bill Murray and, Chris Berman at Pebble Beach in February. A man can dream, right?
I've never thought about that. What would that tournament be like with just the pros? That would be.
It would be a damn good tournament. That's what
yeah, right. That would. Holy crap! That's a good call, John. Absolutely. All right. I think that's a great way to end it, John. Let's go to Andy and let's get your final thoughts.
Yeah, no comment on Danny Lee. It made me think of Mickelson stopping the ball from rolling down the hill a few years ago. That was funny, but no, we save it for podcasts a half a year down the road. But I love the new future U.S. Open sites. Torrey Pines Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts. LA Country Club 2023, which is like this unknown gem in your neck of the woods.
Really is.
So I mean, I don't want to be 41 years old, but that's what I'll be in 2023. But can't wait to see how that looks on TV. So yeah, and the silver lining is, as Nance mentioned, is we'll have a Masters. We don't have to wait a year. We wait, 4 months or whatever, 5 months.
So just to wrap. Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. Anything else?
Knock on wood, unless anything crazy happens.
Oh yeah. That's very true. I mean, I don't want to overstate it as far as the progress with the vaccine and everything else, but for what we've been through, this has been a good year of golf. And guys, I want to thank you again for doing these shows with me. And open invite to you too, Andy, to join us for any of these future major recaps. It's been a good year. I think it's been very interesting how we've managed to do these recap shows, and I'm looking forward to the next one, and we'll see what happens. So guys, thanks again. Thanks for hanging on for this program. It's been good. It's good to talk golf with you all the time, and we'll roll it out again next year. So take care, guys. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy these other events too, and good luck to your picks as well. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, thanks.
All right, see you, Dave.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks.
Boy.
Take care, everybody. Well, have a good evening, and thanks again to everyone else. It's been fun. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody, on this program. We hope you've enjoyed this hybrid show. I am Dave Medina. I've got nothing else to say except that you can find us on Twitter at DITCOW, on the web at DITCOW.com, and on Apple Podcasts, Dave in the City Out West. We've really enjoyed spending time with you, and we hope you get to enjoy the rest of your week as well. So from here on out, we say good night, and we'll see you next time.